I've been on a bit of a journey, a digital painting journey, and I wanted to talk about it, but we have to go back a bit. Before I started working on The Click Smuggler, an animated web series about life as a creator, I had experimented with animation in another video about perfectionism that came about after picking up drawing again, which I had put down for a long time because I didn't think I was good enough at it, and it was a whole thing that I cover in this video if you want the rest of that story. But the main thing was getting a drawing pad about 1.5 years ago and getting into digital painting. And if you want to see how I went from creating this to this in a little over a year, I don't really know what to tell you. It just kind of happened that way. I mean, it started with these Jackbox doodles that led to other sketches. At one point, I was trying to make a video about Andy Schaaf using drawings to depict some of his songs, and the first versions were incredibly rough, but when I went back and tried again in a couple of months, they looked a lot better. I was getting pretty comfortable in this style and having a lot of fun making these, but when it came time to create something for my music, it all fell apart. It's like I was getting the hang of this cartoony look, but as soon as I tried to do anything else, I failed miserably. So I scrapped this image in favor of some art from the public domain that I color corrected, which, I didn't feel great about, but I felt like it was a lot better than what I could do on my own. And then for a while, it was back to the pencil sketching. I made that video, I worked on a lot of writing and other freelance, but then eventually I was ready to release a new song. And this time it was going to go on Spotify. So on top of new track art, I was also going to need a profile picture and a banner, and I just didn't feel like the public domain was going to cut it. An artist photo should really just be a photo of the artist, but I didn't really want to use a selfie, so at first I thought I would try the pencil tool, sticking with the black and white style that I'd been practicing. But first I should make a quick little note that I kind of cheat the footage. I don't have enough hard drive space to screen record everything, so instead what I'll be showing are basically the isolated Photoshop layers with some transitions added in. Anyways, so I started this new document and I brought in this selfie, what used to be my old YouTube picture, and full disclosure, began tracing over the top of it because I am not a proper artist. But even still, tracing only gets you so far. Clearly, this looks like garbage. The skin texture is awful, the mouth looks weird and too dark, and God, don't even get me started on the nose. But really, I started thinking that maybe the pencil just wasn't the right tool for the job. So I looked through Kyle's paint box and I found this watercolor brush that I really liked. And I don't know why, but for as long as I can remember, I always drew eyes. So I started there and I ended up with something that I thought looked kind of cool. But I think it got a little too psychedelic for the music that I'm making, and it felt more like an album cover than an artist picture at any rate. But I did see some potential and I had an idea. Apparently the only facial features I can kind of get right are the eyes. So what if the rest of the features are made up of something else? Like those paintings that hide faces in ordinary things. Maybe it won't be as grounded and realistic as some of those, but maybe I can try my own version of it. So I duplicated the eye, I made the mouth to look like an island with the reflection/shadow acting as the bottom lip, clouds for the eyebrows, and what else?
Put a bird on it!
Perfect, thank you. Then what to do for the nose? Maybe a tree? What about a ship? Terrible. Lighthouse? No. Staircase? Sure, why not? Little box at the end? Yeah, whatever. It's already surreal, so who cares? And it was starting to look like something, but this still wasn't really doing it for me, so I went through and I made some more changes, making the face shape a little more defined, adding in some other small details, changing the nose, adding some clouds for a background, and then redoing the eyes from scratch, and then I was ready to say that this was finished. Far from perfect, but a pretty major improvement over the pencil portrait, and then it was time to work on the track art. And I kind of feel like I went in the opposite direction. I mean, I still like the concept of it, but the execution leaves a lot to be desired. But I think the song left something to be desired too, and I still stood by wanting to post that anyways, so why not the artwork? After all, both of these journeys really only started about 1 year ago at this point. I'm still learning and making mistakes along the way, but that is how you get better. So I put the song out there even though it was rough around the edges with this track art that was also rough around the edges, and then the brushes got set down for a while. It was time to get back to the YouTube and the filmmaking efforts that eventually led to The Click Smuggler with the black and white pencil aesthetic, but it was always inevitable that I would get back to the watercolors because this was kind of my new de facto tool for music-related art, and there was always going to be another song eventually. It just so happened that 3 separate songs were started and abandoned along the way, but in October, I started working on something new that I was really loving. The vision for it was there pretty early, and the execution was taking a while, but by November, it was clear that this would be the next song I would actually finish. And unlike before, I wanted to get a little bit of a head start for the artwork. I had the name of the song, I had the lyrics, a lot of the production was already finished, so I basically had everything I needed to get started, and I sat down again with the watercolors for the first time in something like 7 months. And early prognosis was... I mean, I could see it so clearly in my mind, this red lamp. But just like with the last song, I couldn't get what was in my mind on the page. So I tried looking for reference photos, but I wasn't really finding what I wanted, and I was tempted to dig in the public domain again, but I knew that would feel like a step backwards, so I just sat down and kept trying. And I don't know why, but everything just kind of clicked. I started with this shape tool to make a little reference for myself, adjusting the pressure to get the right texture or the transparency, doing some cleanup, adding some shadows, some details, and then we just need something like a canvas texture, and look at that. Okay. And then you just repeat that process more or less for the base of the lamp. Start with a rough shape, shadows, details, highlights, and then that's looking pretty good to me. And honestly, the walls and the floors felt easy. A lot of this texture came free just by using the right pressure with the brush, and then I just needed some light, and boom. I mean, I was happy to call this done. And if I'm making it all sound a little easy, I mean, it kind of felt that way. All of this was literally 2 hours. I probably spent more time on the font and the placement than the actual painting. And I honestly don't know why things seem to click in a way that they didn't before. I mean, this other painting took me a week. This wasn't even a full day, and I think anyone here would agree which is the better of the two. So I was feeling confident. The new song was coming out great, the artwork turned out great, so maybe it's time to level up the profile picture too. So I grabbed that same selfie and started from scratch. Again, I'm still tracing in a lot of the main shapes, which is admittedly really helpful, but not exactly this cheat code either. But that gives us the face shape and a little outline of the hair, and then as always, I start properly with the eyes. First the whites, then the iris, then the pupil, and then detail. The lids, the lashes, some shadows, and some highlights. And already I'm liking how this is turning out. Do a little rough sketch for the eyebrows, and then let's get the glasses, which admittedly is a pretty recognizable part of my face that probably should have been in the last portrait, but better late than never, I guess. Now comes the hard stuff, the rest of the facial features. Lips, little facial hair, and the dreaded nose, which apparently I had on the same layer as general shadows, but hey, that doesn't look too bad. But what about the background? Do I just want it plain like this? I don't know. I had all these plants behind me in the photos, so what if I do something like that? And oop, these colors worked nicely with the tan background, but now they just felt totally wrong to me. And at first, I really didn't know why that was. I mean, historically, color was a struggle for me. I mean, Exhibit A. My brain was still kind of trapped in kindergarten mode. You see grass, so you grab the green crayon. And you see a sunflower, so you grab the yellow crayon. But that's why this looks like a kid's painting, and why normally I like working with black and white, because it simplifies things. But I don't know, it felt like this image had to be in color, and I was just gonna have to figure it out. So first step was taking everything into a new document in case I screwed everything up, realizing that I actually liked a blue background even better than green, with the thought being instead of plants that it could be water. And then I just experimented with the hue and the saturation to find a shade for the skin tone, which thanks to Photoshop is really simple. And against my expectations, the color that looked the most appropriate was another shade of blue. I mean, in my kindergarten brain, you only grab the blue for a skin tone if you're drawing an alien. But then you realize it's like with everything else you learn as a kid. You always start with the basics and it gets more complicated as you go, learning that things are almost never perfectly black and white. So in this particular case, skin could in fact be blue, and it would look weird if it wasn't. And then bringing in the eyes, you see the same thing. They have to be blue too. And you realize it's just like that all the way down. So I brought in the rest of the rough features and then got to work detailing, bringing in some highlights based in part on the original reference photo, but also where it just felt like there should be highlights. And then it was just the same process as before to get facial hair and the eyebrows and then the lips. And then I let the nose be future me's problem. So I brought in the rest of the body, a few more passes for detail, and this was looking pretty good. But now comes the part I've been putting off. The nose, which already is getting somewhere just from the shapes and the shadows that we've put in already, but it's too dark at the end. We need some more highlights and just general definition. We should probably fill in the nostrils and get some actual proper shadows in there. And then you realize the whole thing is the wrong size and placement, so we just scooch things over, add a couple more flourishes, and wait. I think we've done it. I think that's a finished nose. Then it felt like pretty light work from here. I made a little ripple pattern in the background that I duplicated and blurred. I added in all the detail and the reflections for the glasses, finished up the hair, and in just about 6 hours total, this painting was finished. Now, I know this might not look like anything special to any real artist, but considering where I was just a year and a half ago, I didn't think I would ever be capable of something like this, let alone in such a short time. And I'm really excited to see how I can keep improving over time, because it's not like this is the end of the journey. It's the exact opposite. There will be more songs that need more track art. Eventually there will be an EP or an album that needs art of its own. And who knows, maybe this one will be used for just that. Either way, all things in their own time. But stay tuned, the new song will be coming soon. There will also be more episodes of The Click Smuggler before too long. And I have a few more ideas floating around for some other vlog style videos like this one. If you could call this a vlog, I really don't know what I would call this, but I've got a lot of different things cooking at the moment. And if you want to stay up to date, you guys know the drill. I mean, you can sub, hit the notification bell. I also do have a Patreon that acts as a sort of blog for me to write about things going on behind the scenes that is free to follow if you're interested in that. But I think that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.